Let's see if this works.
Let's hope so.
Okay, guys, we're live from Krakow with this wonderful man, and I'm going to introduce this wonderful man in a little bit. But first, we want to do a check. We want to make sure that you can hear us. So please write in the comment, can you hear us? That is the most important thing. Anything else is not important.
At least not initially,
Okay.
anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I can see the comments here. So we'll wait until everybody confirms that they
you actually
hear us,
can play
okay?
it because we have another computer here to test. You can play the audio. Let's see if we can hear.
I'll turn on the
Just a
audio
second.
and see whether we can hear ourselves.
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear ourselves. Awesome.
Okay, it looks like
Great.
we're on and this is working properly. So we're excited. Tiffany said, I can hear you, which is wonderful news. So let's go back to our men here, please. David, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is David Allen Martin II. I'm from San Diego, California, but I've been living in Germany for the last 20 years. I'm a German and English teacher, as well as a translator and interpreter. And about, almost 10 years ago now, I founded a company that creates language learning systems and applications to help people to learn languages more efficiently and especially with a lot more fun.
That's wonderful. And we're going to see that in action. So stay tuned until the end because we're going to give you a couple of important pieces of advice on how to remember vocabulary, but most of all about understanding texts like that. So
exactly. Yeah.
So stay tuned until the end. And now let's get into it. This is a Q&A. So we're going to answer your questions. We're going to start from the beginning. I'm going to be the moderator here. So I have to be a little bit closer to the computer, which you cannot see right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to pick some questions. And then David is going to give us his, by the way, just David is amazing when it comes to language learning, not only in terms of speaking languages, but also the knowledge. And we've been having a lot of conversations about language learning, how to learn language. We can talk about this for hours. So
that means a lot coming from a guy like Luca. So
anyway, the reason why I'm saying this is not only because I'm pretty sure you're going to find this very cool, but also that we will try to restrain ourselves from talking for 3 hours. So we'll have to put a cap to this. Otherwise,
at some point, yeah.
Because otherwise it's going to last 3 hours.
But we're really excited to hear you guys' questions and help you out with any difficulties you may be having.
And while we're here at the same time and we're working on something really cool, we're going to talk about that. You're going to see a lot of cool stuff happening this very same week. Let's get started. Let me pick some questions as promised.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start with Kim. I have to lay here closer to the computer. I know it's possible to really get a certain accent, but how do you actually do it? What's the best way to train your ear, mouth, and brain to nail it perfectly? I guess what Kim wants to know is whether you can reach a native-like accent, I guess, my interpretation, and how do you do it? One last thing before we start. David will give his advice, and I will chime in a little bit. I'll try to be succinct and concise and brief.
Maybe we should both do that.
We'll try.
While still providing as much value as possible to you guys. So should I go ahead and get started? Okay, Kim, well, thank you for the question. So first and foremost, obviously, in German, you say, von nichts kommt nichts. So from nothing comes nothing. What does that mean? That means you need to have quality input to have quality output. So if you want to improve your accent, you need to first look at your input and see whether you're actually getting enough of it yet. Most people, unfortunately, most learners do not get enough input in the form of auditory input, which means they simply have not had enough examples of good speech in order to model their own speech off of that. So to give you an example, I have oftentimes met Dutch people, or I should say Dutch speakers, whether they're from the Netherlands or from Belgium, who I thought were native speakers of English, even though they had never, I didn't know this, but they had never actually been to an English-speaking country. It was simply because they grew up listening to English on television and had subtitles in their language, and they heard English so much that the amount of input that they had gotten was comparable to that of a native speaker. So they simply, obviously, at some point, you need to start emulating what you're hearing, but if you get enough input, it's obviously a lot easier to emulate. I like to call it the song principle. If you hear a song enough times, you just know the lyrics without actually trying to learn them. In fact, you can't not learn them. If you hear something enough times, your brain will simply pick it up whether you want it to do that or not. Okay, so that's the very first step. And then you need to start identifying the things that are difficult, in particular for speakers of your native language. So let's say if you are a speaker of German, for example, I teach English to a lot of Germans. and they have very specific difficulties with English. In German, like in Dutch, like in Polish, many Slavic languages, you have something that's called final syllable consonant devoicing. What that means is that voiced consonants become voiceless, so D becomes T, B becomes P, G becomes K. So what happens is German speakers tend to make voiced consonants voiceless at the end of words in English, and that causes all kinds of problems, especially with comprehension by native speakers. So my favorite example is you can take the word bed, bet, bad, and bat, which is 4 separate words, 4 distinct words in English. And your average German speaker who has not worked on this, they'll say all of these as bet. And so that's just one example. So you need to get enough input. You need to identify difficulties of native speakers of your language and eliminate those systematically. And then obviously you also need to master each one of the individual sounds of the language that you're learning, as well as how those sounds combine phonologically. Okay, I won't go into any more detail than that. There's quite a bit of science to this, but it is possible for anyone to improve their pronunciation.
We can do an entire workshop or webinar live on pronunciation. This is one of the other things we love, right?
Yes,
we literally
absolutely
love talking about that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't add anything else because I've talked about this before, but I think it's a big thing in and of itself. But just to summarize, it's important to get a lot of input. People tend to think about what do I do in terms of drilling. I have to imitate. Great, but you first have to listen, and you have to listen attentively and proactively. That's the most important thing. Precisely. So thank you for the very interesting question. Mm-hmm. Julia, I'm going to take her. She's thank you for the contribution. It's always nice. And she says, I'm just going to read the message as it is. It's in Brazilian Portuguese, and then I'm going to translate it. Mm-hmm. A little bit of practice in Brazilian Portuguese.
Indeed, yeah.
Se você fosse contar quantos idiomas você fala, sorry if I'm butchering this, but I have more like a Portuguese,
European Portuguese.
Português lusitano. Quantos seriam? Beijos e abraços do Brasil. Sou seu fã. Você é uma inspiração para mim. Thank you, Julia. She said, if you have to count the amount of language you speak, how much would how many would that be?
Would there be? Yeah, exactly.
You can start first, and then I can chime in. What does it mean to? Yeah. What does it mean to speak a language?
Idiomas você fala? Yeah, I mean you have to define what you mean by falar. So, if we're talking about languages that you speak really well, in my particular case, it would be German. I mean, most Germans think that I'm German, so I guess quasi-native level.
I can testify to that, even if I'm not
German. And Spanish, I've passed the C1 exam. I've never tried the C2 exam, but I think that I could almost certainly pass it. And then I speak a number of other languages to greater or lesser degree. And it always depends on what languages I kind of use the most in my, kind of week-to-week business. I mean, as far as learning and maintaining languages, this guy is the master on that. So I'll allow you to take the stage on that one, Luca.
When people ask me how many languages you speak, I always reply, I've been learning 14 languages, because the reality is first you have to define speaking, right? Mm-hmm. When you say I speak 14 languages, it's an easy answer to give, but it's a difficult one to really delve into, in the sense that the reality is, according to my standards, speaking means to speak a language fluently, to be able to have a conversation, to be able to function within a society. And by those standards, or by that definition, I would say that I speak 10 languages, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I speak 10 languages fluently. Once again, what does it mean to speak a language? What does it mean to speak a language fluently? It really depends on a number of things, but I can tell you that in my experience, I've been learning 14 languages, 15 if you include Latin, but Latin is a dead language, so I don't consider that as a language, a living language that I've learned, so to speak, or I speak. Mm-hmm. But I've been learning 14 languages, and I speak 10 of them fluently. And those would be, let's see, Italian is my native language, and that counts as a language, because you tend to forget it. Yeah, English, French, Spanish, German, Dutch, Swedish, Russian, Polish, and I would say Portuguese as well, and Greek. So that makes 11, I think, right? Did I count one? I don't know. Yeah. 10 or 11, and there are other 3, Danish, Mandarin Chinese, Japanese, and something else. I would say Hungarian is a language that I'm conversational in. I will not call myself fluent. So I can get by, and the other 3 are in the back burner, so to speak, because it's, you only have 24 hours a day. And
this guy's an absolute machine.
Something's got to give. Something's got to give.
At some point, yes.
Okay.
I think I've heard you speak all of those languages whilst being here in Poland.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
One day we're going to go around. If you like it, just drop in the comment. We're going around with the iPhone, with talking to everybody, like some other YouTubers do. We've never done it before, but maybe you're going to like that.
Yeah.
Renato says legends. I read legendas. I'm reading everything in Portuguese from Brazil. Okay, I'm going to pick up some questions at random here, and then I'm just going to go up, and we're going to try to reply to everybody. It's not going to be easy, but let's see. So someone said, what is the ratio you have of input to output in a language? I will reply very quickly here. Yeah. For me, it's 80-20. The 80-20 rule is mainly input all the time and output 20% of the time. I see it like as a true Italian, learning to speak a language like making pizza. You first throw a lot of, like, what do you call it? The dough, right? You have to put in a lot of stuff, and then you have to give it a form. So you have to work on it, and giving it a form or structure a little bit is the output. Output allows you to see the gaps that you have. You can get a lot of input, but when it comes to speaking and writing, you have to start speaking and writing, right? So in a nutshell, that would be 80-20, depending on the language, but input is something easy that if you structure well, we're going to talk about this a little bit later. If you get the right inputs, that's the first thing. And then output is the cherry on top, like the cake and the cherry on top, or the pizza.
Yeah. But we should also mention that output needs to be done in a very specific way, depending on what your level is, and that's something that we are going to talk a lot more about very soon.
True that.
Yeah, true that. Yeah,
true
exactly.
That.
It shouldn't be willy-nilly. It shouldn't just be all over the map. There are more efficient and less efficient ways to get input and to get output.
Exactly. And in the same vein, someone asks, I think it's Bajan Alpha, I don't know. I have about 2,000 hours of Spanish input. That's a lot of input. I want to get a native-like level, and I'm decent enough that I can live in Spain with no issues. What are some active exercises that will get me to native-like level? So you said I can live in Spain with no issues, meaning that you live in Spain, or that the potential you can live in Spain, because that might be, that's a different matter.
I can live in Spain with no. I mean, I assume that they already live in Spain.
I guess. I guess by the looks of it. Do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So obviously you have the law of diminishing returns. So the higher your level gets, the more difficult it becomes to get even better, right? I ran into this with my German. It was a long time ago now, but I would say after maybe 1 year of living in Germany, I lived entirely in German. All my friends were German speaking. I went to university in German. I think I spoke English maybe once a month to my family on Skype back in the day. And otherwise, I just lived entirely in German. And I reached, I would say, a point after about a year where on a good day, people actually thought that I was German, but that doesn't mean that I reached the level that I'm where I'm at now, but that was also after 1 year of living in the country, right? And so I had to go out of my way in order to achieve an even higher level. What did that mean? That meant especially watching and listening to things and reading things, especially once you get to higher and higher levels, and Luca talks about this a lot, you need to do a heck of a lot of reading, because you're not going to just randomly learn the words that you need in order to sound like an educated native speaker of your target language unless you do a lot of reading, or you're doing a lot of watching and listening to people who talk like they write. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that you're watching TED Talks, you're listening to podcasts, radio shows where you have educated speakers, whether they're scientists or journalists, and they're speaking at a very, very high level, and they're using a wide variety of vocabulary. That's just the kind of tip of the iceberg, but you need to be pushing the envelope, as we say, pushing your boundaries at all times in order to get to higher and higher echelons, as Luca likes to say.
Love it. You like that? You're paying attention during the class.
Sure.
So I would just add one of the points you touched upon is reading. I think that in order to reach native-like fluency, there's actually two kinds of fluency, what I call it. The B2 fluency, native fluency, meaning you speak like native speakers, but you're not eloquent. And then there's like the eloquent level, that is C1, C2. In order to reach that level, you have to, well, basically you have to read a lot on top of watching documentaries, watching movies, etc. It's a holistic thing. You have to pay attention. I think in my case, it comes to being really interested in wanting to sound like a native. So paying attention to the little details, even when I watch movies, I notice how people talk. In Italian, we have this beautiful word. It's called prosemica. Prosemica is the part is prosemica, and also pragmatics in linguistics is that part that studies how ideas and things are conveyed within different cultures. The way we use not only the body, but also some things that we say in certain situations, how we react.
Yeah.
I always paid a lot of attention to these details that really make a difference because they add up. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So you're really interested, then you pay attention, you tune in, you say, okay, that guy said that thing in that specific situation with that intonation, and you pick it up. Right? Just an example, sometimes in Polish, he says, for example, trudno. So they elongate the vowel to say trudno. Certain intonation patterns convey certain emotions, and I pay attention to everything. That is what really makes a difference. Yeah.
Chinese speakers, when there's what we would say and they say right. And Luca and I have always just picked up on that, or at least we did already at the beginning stage, and then at some point we realized that we were doing that, and then we started to do it even more because it comes across as being very, very authentic.
Exactly. It takes a lot of years. It takes a lot of attention. It takes a lot of reading, listening, having conversations with people, noticing things. That's what takes you to native-like level. It takes a long time.
Yes.
But it's definitely worth it.
But it gets easier over time.
It gets easier over time, of course. This is an easy question to answer. What country are you guys in? Byron leaves a lot of comments. Thank you, Byron, for all the kind words. He's been pushing me to have an interview with Stu Raj or Stu Ray, and we'll have that.
I think Byron was in I think it was in the last live that we did.
Byron is always around.
Thanks for being there, Byron.
Thank you, Byron.
What country are we in?
We didn't answer the question.
Yeah, we're in Poland.
We're in Poland. We're in Krakow.
Yeah.
We're in Krakow, and it's wonderful. Right?
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, this city is amazing, and Poland as a country is just amazing.
It is. Yeah. I can't get enough of that.
No.
Teresa says, I cannot hear you, but I guess this is old because someone said to put on earphones. Teresa is a student of mine. She's German, and she came here to visit a month ago.
Okay.
She brought a lot of gifts, Teresa. That was wonderful.
Ah, that's Teresa. Oh, okay, cool. Hello. Yeah.
Did you meet Teresa? I'm not sure.
I didn't know, but I saw the stories.
Teresa has a question about Lingvathor, by the way. She's been asking me about Lingvathor a lot. We're going to talk about that, Teresa. So stay tuned. We're going to show you how a little bit about what Lingvathor is and how I've been using it and how it can be useful for you learning Russian and for many other people. So this is another interesting question. This is about grammar. How do you study languages like German or Greek where you have to remember 4 forms of the same word? I'll get you answer that.
You let me answer that. The guy who speaks Polish and Russian. Okay. And Hungarian for that matter. And Greek. Yeah.
Well, I can answer this, and you can chime in. But you've learned German, which is a little bit simpler, right? German used to be tough as well. They simplify the system.
Yeah, it is complex, but it's less complex than, let's say, Greek or Polish, and especially things like Hungarian.
So I'll try to be brief. This is something I'm very passionate about.
Good luck.
I gotta give it a try. Okay, so first of all, I don't know if you've heard, I keep repeating this, referring to this quote, Kato Lomb, or Lomb Kato, as the Hungarians call her. She used to say that you don't learn language from grammar, but you learn grammar from language. And that means that, to me, the most important thing is to get a content that you like. And then you can create, or you can find content that has some very lean and concise grammar explanations, whose main purpose is to clarify and facilitate the comprehension and the grasp of what you're consuming. Okay, so let's start from that base. The problem is sometimes we just focus too much on grammar. We do grammar drills and we tend to think I have to nail all these forms. I have to remember them by heart. But the main problem is that the brain does not learn that easily. It's not a very brain-friendly way of learning and acquiring languages, because the brain figures things, patterns, if you give it the right food. Imagine acquiring a language like setting up a table and then preparing the food. So you have to set up the table, you have to get good food, quality food, and then you have to digest it. So setting up a table and chewing slowly and finding the right food is up to you. But then the digestion is something you cannot control, right? What normally happens when people try to learn, for example, German by nailing all the forms, and Russian or Polish, etc., they try to memorize these tables, conjugation tables, or these declensions. This does not work. The brain does not like that, because you're tapping into what is called declarative memory.
Exactly.
That you know about these things, but you cannot use them on the fly. So when you try to communicate, then your brain, there's a big conflict between the things you know and the things you can say. You cannot do the same thing. So my simple, I know that this might sound simple, but at the end of the day, language learning is simple at its core, but not easy to apply. Consume as much content as you can, right? To put it very succinctly, to consume as much content as you can, and then activate that content. But activate the language. You have to speak with people. Let's say you consume 10 podcasts, you talk about these podcasts, you make a summary, you talk to someone, get feedback, because you're going to mess things up.
Yeah.
And then you get corrections, and then you can try to say the same things after the correction, and you learn on the go. So that's how you learn dynamically and in an organic way, tapping into what is called the other part of memory, right? So you have declarative memory and you have procedural memory. So that's how kids learn. Now, this is a little bit complex. We can talk about this more in detail another time, but the bottom line is consume a lot of content, speak with someone you can pay, or AI or whatever, and get feedback, reapply that feedback. Your brain will figure these patterns on the go.
Yeah, and get really good at noticing, right? Get really good. And the noticing hypothesis is something that is thrown around quite a bit. But it's really true. You do need to get really good at noticing. Like Luca was saying before, he notices little tells, little things, like drawing out certain vowels that people do. And you need to get good at noticing those things and internalizing them. So it's not just about noticing it, but internalizing it. So one example of grammar, for example, in German, you oftentimes, when you say mit dem and then say something, so for example, ich fahre morgen mit dem Zug nach Berlin, right? Mit dem Zug. But if you listen to native speakers, they almost never say mit dem, they say mim Zug. So not just mim, but they don't say Zug, they say Zug. Now this is a dialectical thing. It depends on where somebody's from, but those are all things that you need to notice. And what I often find is that, especially beginner language learners, they only pay attention to the what, and they don't pay attention to the how of what it is that they're hearing. So pay very close attention to the way that native speakers speak, and constantly compare and contrast what you think, what you're expecting to hear, and what they're actually saying and how they're actually saying it. So as soon as I noticed that, wait, they're not saying mit dem at all, they're saying mim, then I started to do that myself, right? And people, at first my friends are laughing. They're like, well, you sound like a German. I'm like, yeah, good. that's the idea.
Yeah.
Right? And extrapolate on that idea.
Yeah, going back to what he was saying, when you get feedback allows you to notice. If you can't notice it yourself, someone is going to notice for you, be it a robot, a machine, a tutor, or someone you pay. Normally, you don't get that kind of feedback when you talk to people, because people are not interested in correcting you. First, because they think it's rude. Second, because they think they're not your teachers. So you have to find ways to notice more. You can do it yourself, but we have limits. And if you can find ways to notice, there are many ways in which you can notice grammar patterns, intonation patterns, pronunciation, pragmatics, how people speak, the way they use words, the way you use their hands, their body in order to express themselves, all the better. These things pile up, and you're going to get to native-like fluency, right?
If you keep working at it, you will, absolutely.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. I cannot keep up with the number of questions we're getting, so but we're going to give it a try. So Mohammed Salah is I do sometimes I speak with a slight Southern accent. He likes it.
Or a Scottish accent.
Or a Scottish accent. And is immersion the right approach for preparing for an exam? Mohammed, I can get that. The answer is immersion is always cool as a base, but when you're preparing for a specific language exam, then you should go through the books that prepare you for that exam. You should specifically prepare for that exam. Sometimes if it's a B2, C1, C2, even native speakers are going to find it difficult because they're going to require you to do certain exercises that native speakers have forgotten, that they did at school. Give a speech, give a presentation, or structure something. So my answer is immersion is always good. It's something that you should do by any stretch of the imagination, but also you should prepare specifically for an exam. I've prepared a lot of students, and he has prepared a lot of students as well. So we have a lot of students.
Yeah. Immersion will not get you there. Is this the short and simple answer?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not enough. You need to, as Luca said, even a native speaker needs to prepare to take a C1 or a C2 exam because it's an educated speaker exam.
Okay, well, that's true. Anika says, W, you're a fantastic duo. It's super exciting. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Anika. Thank you. So Jordan says, in the same vein, do you guys think the language proficiency exams are useful? And have you found them useful in your lives? Have you taken language exams?
Yes, German, Spanish, Chinese. Those are the exams that I've taken.
What pushed you to Chinese? It is like out of necessity.
I studied all three languages at university, so I had to take the language exams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But have you found them useful? So it depends on what you mean by useful. I do think that taking language proficiency exams can push you to higher levels. Mm-hmm. So if you find that that's something that pushes you, then you should do that. But I won't say necessarily that preparing for an exam is going to make you a good speaker, because oftentimes the skills that you're training are quite, they're quite different to what you need in real life situations.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Yeah, exactly. So if you like taking exams and if you find that they push you, absolutely, by all means, do it. And if you just like getting those certificates, I have a very good friend, Judy, amazing polyglot from South Korea, and she has every certificate under the sun, right? And she's really, really good, and that pushes her getting that certificate. That's awesome. But not everybody's a big fan of exams.
Yeah. Well, I have nothing to add to that. Let's go back to Teresa. Teresa, again, our beloved student at the Language Learning Academy. Mm-hmm. Teresa, don't worry, we're going to show you Linguathor. She's been asking me about Linguathor the whole week. Mm-hmm. Which exercises would you recommend to activate passive vocabulary, speaking better than writing for active output? I'll let you handle that. So how do you activate? Mm-hmm. This is one of the things we're going to talk in length next, in a few days.
Is speaking better than writing for active output? Both can be useful, but if you want to speak, you have to speak. So you can combine them, but really, I find that speaking is generally the thing that people don't do enough. First of all, the thing that they most definitely don't do enough is the listening, and then beyond listening, it's speaking. So you need to find ways to speak more. But the problem with speaking, especially at the beginning, is that it's incredibly cognitively taxing. That means that the so-called cognitive load or the cognitive strain is very high. So you need to find ways to attenuate that strain, to lessen that strain.
I like it, attenuate.
It's a good word, yeah. Mitigate, another good one. Yeah, we're pulling out all the $100 vocabulary words here, so that it's not as strenuous, and so that you can, engage in whatever the activity is and do it successfully. So one way that you can do that is you actually use a text, you get input, you get to the point where you can. Now, when I say text, I also mean video and audio. As long as you have both audio and text, then you have the right combination. So you get to the point where you can understand that. And then what you can do is you can actually create questions, whether you do it manually or with AI these days. And the answers to the questions are found directly in the text. And the best possible scenario is that the exact, in German you say Wortlaut, the exact wording of the text is the answer to those questions. And I love this because what you can do is you can actually record yourself asking the questions, which is great practice. Then you can listen back to the questions, pause. At the beginning, you're just trying to understand the question, and then you're looking for the answer. Eventually, you want to get to the point where you can hear the question and then immediately answer without actually needing to refer back to the text. If you just go through those steps, you will find that your vocabulary explodes.
It's going to skyrocket.
To the moon.
To the moon?
To the moon.
This man knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. And that's just one exercise, right, that you can do.
There's many.
There are. Yes, absolutely.
We're gonna get into that, Teresa. Don't worry. There's more surprises coming out this week. So someone said, interesting. This is not a question. It's more like a comment. I'm holding if you see me looking down, it's because I'm monitoring the situation in the comment section so that I can pick up some comments. Italian has been difficult for me, Debra says, because I have to use a different part of my mouth and throat than in English. I've only heard Luca talk about this, and it was so helpful. There's something called voice positioning, or which, right?
Yeah, placement.
Placement. So placement, basically, you can explain that, but it's just, you change. It's not just how you use your tongue and how you use the different the phonatory system. It's really where your voice comes from, the placement, right?
Where it resonates, if you will.
It's a resonator. Your mouth is a resonator.
Inside of your head, yeah. So one thing that you'll notice, for example, is that in general, Spanish tends to sound more nasal. And that's because the placement of the voice when you speak Spanish. Now, this will vary from Pues no lo sé. You see, I automatically start doing that. So we do this automatically because we both lived in Spain, and that's simply the way that we learned the language. But it's not everyone automatically does this, right? And so if you can find ways to emulate, and many people feel a little bit embarrassed about emulating because they feel it's difficult because you have to go outside of your comfort zone, right? When you have an accent is nothing more than using the sounds and habits of your own native language in the target language. That's all that an accent is. So by definition, in order to sound less foreign and more native, you have to go outside of your comfort zone, because otherwise you're just going to sound like, a speaker of language A learning language B, right? So with regard to Italian is also more nasal, I would say, than English, but not quite as nasal. But that's just one aspect, right? And once again, we could talk about this for hours.
For centuries, for days and centuries.
For days and centuries, yeah.
Teresa thanks you, by the way. She's very happy that you answered the question.
My pleasure, yeah, absolutely.
If you guys are interested in a masterclass about pronunciation, intonation, voice placement,
please let us know. Yeah, we love this stuff.
Drop a comment in the comment section, and we'll try to do our best. Someone says, Lena says, in one of your last videos, Luca praised the app Notebook LM. I tried it. Yes, it creates podcasts, but I need the scripts too. Do I need another program to get a transcription for the Notebook LM podcast? Well, nowadays, I'm going to write them here. You have Google AI Studio, so you can create a podcast and easily a transcription of this podcast with that. You can use, I think it's something called Turbo Scribe. I'm just Turbo Scribe AI. I'm going to leave it here in the comment section. Oh, wow, this is a long one.
That's because there's a reference link.
Yeah, so this is Turbo Scribe AI. I think that was discussed in one of the last posts within the Academy, the Academy space with the students. They were asking right about the stuff. I use Mac Whisper. I have a Mac, and I paid for this, I think, back in the day, 20 euros for life. Like, it lasts a lifetime, and I use it all the time. And now you can use Google AI without a problem.
So, and the cool thing about Google AI Studio is that you can just drop a YouTube link directly into Google AI Studio and say, transcribe this video, and it gives you a perfect transcript of the YouTube video.
Yeah, so it's free. Basically, you can use Google AI, Turbo Scribe. These are things that are available for free.
Yeah.
And Mac Whisper, I just got fond of it, and I use it all the time. But you have a lot of ways to create a transcription, and I would add that it's a very important element to your learning. So it's important to get, a podcast, the audio, which is the most important thing. But then if you don't have a transcription, and if you get the audio at a certain level and it's a little bit higher than your level, then you should definitely get a transcript. Brian P says, this is a really interesting question. It's not recommended to learn two similar languages at the same time, like Spanish and Italian. Is it okay to maintain one while learning the other by, say, simply watching and listening to content? Brian, this is an excellent question. For the students of my academy, they know that I've been developing a course about learning and maintaining, and one of the biggest questions is this one. In my experience, learning two very similar languages from scratch is not a good idea. Someone else wrote that they're learning Czech and Russian, and they said they're quite different. I wouldn't say so, because Czech and Russian belong basically to the same Slavic family. So I would say it depends on when you say maintaining one. If you have a B2 level, say if you're fluent in one, then learning the other becomes actually it's easier, because you have always a little bit of interference. So think about, let's say you are Mark American and you're learning Italian and Spanish. If you learn them from scratch, Italian is going to conflict with Spanish, and Spanish is going to get into they're going to really like two brothers fighting.
Get each other's hair.
Exactly. While if you're Italian or you're Spanish, let's say your Spanish is already at a very good level, then it's going to help you. So Spanish is going to help you learn Italian. There is going to be some interference.
That's exactly how I learned Italian.
Which is inevitable, right?
Yeah. I came from a C1 Spanish and still had interference, even though my Spanish is really solid.
Inevitable.
It's inevitable because they're so similar.
But it's less dramatic than if you were learning them at the same time.
Absolutely, especially because a lot of the grammatical structures are similar or effectively the same. If you think about it, in Spanish, he visto; in Italian, ho visto. It's almost the same, right?
Yes.
Italian is slightly more complex than Spanish for a variety of reasons, which I won't go into the details of. But regardless, like there is so much language transfer, as we like to call it, that it's worth it. Like it's worth it to have that bit of interference. But I absolutely agree with Luca that it makes more sense to really nail one of those languages first, because you will find. I mean, I was conversational in Italian. I mean, seriously, within like a month. I mean, I had a Spanish accent for sure, and I was mixing the two languages, but I was definitely conversational, and I was really doing quite well after 3 to 6 months, right? Pick one and stick with it, and then in a year from now, start with the other.
Move on to the other one. But the question is interesting because it's not just about that. Is it okay to maintain while learning the other? Okay, by say simply watching and listening to content. It really depends on what you want to do with the other language. Let's say that you've reached a good level in Spanish. Are you fluent in it? Do you speak it fluently? Because if you don't speak it for a while, your speaking skills are gonna degrade pretty fast. You're gonna get rusty. But the more you know a language, the faster you get back into it. Listening and watching and consuming content is still great. You just keep contact with the language. If you want to speak it, like if by maintaining you mean speaking skills, then you should get at least, I don't know, a 30-minute conversation a week if you can't use the language in your environment. So it really depends on what you mean by maintaining. What are you maintaining? Are you maintaining your listening skills, your speaking skills, your writing skills?
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, yes, you can do that. The minimum would be to listen to something. You can watch a Netflix show once a week or twice a week. You can listen to the radio first thing in the morning. It really depends. You have to really define your goals.
Yeah.
When a goal is more defined, you're going to immediately understand, okay, I've defined, I want to maintain my speaking fluency. Okay, well, that means that I have to speak at least a couple of times a week. How do I do that? Where do I live? Who are my friends? You really have to assess the situation in order to be able to tell, okay, this is what I need to do in order to accomplish, to meet this one goal that I've clearly defined, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I will also say that you could theoretically learn Spanish and Italian, for example, simultaneously, if you're not actually focusing on speaking, if you're just focusing on comprehension. And you will find that there is not really any interference because you're not trying to actively produce the language. If you then, let's just say you reach a B2 level of comprehension in both languages after a year, you decide to start working on one of them, then only work on one of them. That is to say, you can learn them at the same time from the very beginning, but just don't focus on output, only focus on input. And then when you start focusing on output, just start with one and then move to the other.
Right. By the way, Brian just said, I'm only at A2, B1 in both. I hate the idea of losing my progress in while developing the other. This is a common thing. and I understand it. But in the long term, it might actually be, if you think about it long term and not short term, it might be better to focus on one, develop fluency, and then that one is going to help you go back and learn the other. I completely understand your sentiment and your emotions, because once you start learning a language, it's like starting to, I don't know, date a girl and then you drop it. Well, maybe not. Okay, I'll forget about that. Okay, let's move on to the next question.
Honestly, as long as you regularly hear a language, like listen to the language, you're not going to forget most. You're definitely going to lose active ability if you're not regularly speaking, but you absolutely won't. And even if you don't hear the language, like I've gone periods where I haven't spoken. This was a long time ago when I moved to China, for example. I was focusing on Chinese. I went 6 months without speaking any Spanish. And yeah, I was rusty in speaking, but because I reached a C1 level before I stopped speaking it, I very quickly got that back. So just make sure that you regularly, maybe take a break from one, but make sure that once a week or so, you listen maybe to a podcast episode, 30 minutes to an hour, and you'll actually find that you maintain most of it, of your progress, hard-won progress.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Hard-won progress. I like that. Osman says, I have 2 focused hours a day to study and I listen to English podcasts during the day. I'm stuck at a B1 plateau. How should I structure those 2 hours to reach B2? Which activities would you recommend? Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah, that's
2 focused hours. Okay. Do you want to get that? Do you want to answer?
Sure. So 2 focus hours a day to study, listen to English podcasts during the day. I'm stuck at a B1. I'll just do the 2 hours to reach B2. Which, okay. So the question is, you said you listen to English podcasts during the day. Now, it's very important to ask yourself, okay, what am I doing beyond that listening? Because the problem is, there is a plateau, and it's usually around the B1, B2 level, where you're doing lots of listening, but you stop gaining or making as much progress just by virtue of doing more listening. And this has actually happened to me. This happened to me with Chinese, right? So I had to pivot. I had to change what I was doing in order to continue to make progress. So what you need to do is you need to say, okay, I'm going to continue to do listening, but I need to do other things in order to, for example, improve, in particular, my speaking ability. You said you're stuck at a B1 plateau. I assume you mean speaking-wise and not comprehension-wise. If it is comprehension-wise, then it might be because the way that you're getting the input is inefficient. And that's why we're going to talk about Linguathor T3 in a little bit, and how you can get input more efficiently, especially more comprehensively, so you can understand higher level language more easily. But what I would do is I would structure your 2 hours, and in particular, inject activities that you have not been doing, right? So you could do the speaking activity with the questions and answers that I talked about earlier. You could obviously also, Luca likes to do this a lot, actually I do as well, take something that you have already learned at a B1 level, chuck it into ChatGPT or Gemini and say, give me this same text at a B2 level or at a C1 level. You can actually do them one after the other. Another thing that I like to do is I'll take content and then I'll say, give me this text in a table at a B1 or at a A2, B1, B2, and C1 level, line by line, sentence by sentence. So it'll actually, and the ChatGPT 5, Gemini 2.5, the newest ones, they do this really well and super fast. And then I can actually systematically look at how the language gets more complex as you go up the level ladder, if you will. And this is if you do this on a daily basis, you'll start to notice how kind of stuck you are in a B1 bubble. And that's oftentimes the culprit, right? Is that you're not pushing the envelope with regard to the content.
Yeah, just in case you're interested, I have an entire course on that. It's called Overcoming the Intermediate Plateau. A little bit of an ad here.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but this is a very common problem. I'm just going to leave one of the reasons why I've created this is because people were constantly asking me, I'm stuck at his A2 or B1 level. How do I get to B2? And it's a very common thing. We talked about the law of diminishing returns. It's a very common thing. It's also a perception that you have that you're stuck. But as you were saying before, it's really important to take into account the fact that if you want to keep making progress, you have to be smart about it. Why am I stuck? Well, I'm doing the same stuff. Einstein used to say it's crazy to expect different results if you always do the same thing.
Do the same thing, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
you want to try to experiment with new things that are going to stretch you. Like, you have to imagine that your brain is like a muscle. We see, when we train, we see the muscle grow. When we train the brain, we don't see what is happening in the brain. We can feel it, but you have to find ways to challenge yourself
and objectively measure progress.
And you have to find a way to measure progress. So you have to design ways in which you say, okay, am I going in the right direction? Am I making progress? We can talk about that later. Anyway, I'm just sharing this page here while we're at it. There you go. For those who are interested, you can check that. And if you have any questions, you can check the course. If you have any questions about the course, let me know. Xalka, I think that's his name. Thank you for the $5 for the contribution. It's always nice. Thank you very much, guys. Any contribution is much appreciated. How has language learners changed over time? Oh, this is a big one. So is ASIMIL good for Asian languages? I'm used to ASIMIL, which is said to be outdated. I have a CELTA for English. I'm going to briefly reply to that, and then this is AI master. So, so there's a lot to discuss, but I would say these are two different questions. Let me get the first one. Is ASIMIL good for Asian languages? Not in my experience. I've tried the Chinese was okay, but it lacked a little bit of content, a little bit of meat, if you want to call it that. It's not bad, but it could have been better in comparison with most European languages. For Japanese, I didn't like it at all. It started really complicated, and it's not the only culprit. It's not the only reason why I fail to learn Japanese, but it's one of the reasons. So ASIMIL was not that great. But here's the interesting question. How has language learning changed over time? The principles are timeless. They don't change. What changes is the technology. So just to give you an example, as of now, Salkat Trader, I hope I didn't butcher your name. What you can do nowadays, if you think about it, is we were talking about this because we've been working on a bunch of projects, and again we have a few surprises, not only today but later in the week. So stay tuned. Think about it. Okay, I have ASIMIL. You're still thinking about getting ASIMIL? Great. It's a great start. Now, the problem is, as far as I'm concerned, and I think this has been his experience as well. We talked about it when we were discussing certain things. He said, and I said, ASIMIL gets boring fast, right? So what is it that you can do nowadays? You can create your own ASIMIL way better because it's going to be highly tailored to you. So imagine learning a language. I'm an astronomy buff. I talk about this all the time. Imagine that I like astronomy. I like history. I like languages, of course. And I also like talking about my life and what I do. What if you can give those pieces of information, you can feed them to AI, which is going to create a course for you. And you're going to learn exactly what you like, exactly what you need from the very beginning. You can do that nowadays and more. And we've been talking about that, and this is the AI master.
Well, not just talking about it, but that's how we operate, right? Yeah, I run an academy called the German AI Academy, where we teach people how to use AI to.
What was the URL? I'm gonna, a little bit of ad here.
If you just search Google German AI Academy.
German AI Academy.
And if that doesn't find it right away, you can also put in Natural Fluent German. Natural Fluent German. You should find it right away. Natural Fluent German is a YouTube channel run by my friend and business partner, Flemming Goldbecher. He's from Germany.
Share it here.
And he has a great podcast by the same name, Natural Fluent German. You can find the channel on YouTube. And yeah, perfect. And we run the German AI Academy together. And like I said, we help people to use AI to learn German much more quickly and effectively than they otherwise would. And we also spend a lot of time on exam prep because a lot of people want to take the German exam because they need it to work in Germany.
Excellent. I've seen it, and it's pretty impressive. The thing is not just about you can use and leverage AI to create your own content. The amazing thing is that you can learn, like it teaches you. It's like a tutor telling you what to do to consume that content to the best of your possibilities. So it's just mind blowing what you can do nowadays. So if you're asking me, is ASIMIL outdated? It is a little bit, right? I still, if I have to learn a new language, which I will, by the way, and for example, Hebrew, Vietnamese, and Icelandic are the next victims, so to speak, then I will use Asimo because I'm fond of it, but I will do
beneficiaries
of not victims
of your attention.
So I like the next victims. Then in that case, I will use Asimo, but I will also use my own. I will design my own course in a day. It's amazing what you can do.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
In a day, in a few hours. Right?
Yes, absolutely. If you know how to use AI effectively, then you can really be quite fast about this. Honestly, I might add to that anything that you enjoy is good. That is to say, something is always better than nothing. That doesn't necessarily mean that the things that you're doing are the most efficient or will get you there the fastest. But as long as you enjoy it and it keeps you motivated and it keeps you doing things, then it's absolutely better than nothing, right? Because the worst thing that you can do is nothing. But if you can also add other things that you enjoy on top of whatever that already existing thing is, or modify that thing slightly so you learn even more, then all the better.
Right? Yeah, remember the Venn diagrams. Imagine like you're interesting and then efficient, and you have that sweet spot where what you're doing is interesting, and then it's also efficient on top of that.
Yeah.
And by the way, speaking of interesting, someone asks here, Jacek, what is your take on shadowing, and more specifically shadowing plus rephrasing? It seems to be working really well for me. Well, the answer, Jacek, I once again, I hope I'm not butchering your name. The answer is, if it works well for you, you should continue doing that. I do not do shadowing. I don't know if you ever done shadowing.
I have used shadowing before. Yeah. I have an anecdote, but go ahead, please.
It's just I don't use shadowing. It's not that I don't like it. I tried it, but I have different methods that work for me. This does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that shadowing is a bad thing. If it works for you, what shadowing does is that it forces you to articulate sounds, to produce sounds, to follow the voice, the cadence of the person. And if you like it, it's a good thing.
And it also forces you to speak faster than you normally would. And that's actually one of the things that Luca and I do quite automatically, that at some point I realized that your average learner doesn't necessarily do, is that we actively, and probably initially we did it subconsciously, but we actively attempt to speak faster and more fluently. As soon as we learn something, then we immediately start to automate it. That is to say, it's not just about noticing things like I said earlier, like mim tzuch, right?
We speak in tongues the whole day.
We speak it, yeah. But you'll notice that when Luca knows something, he says it. I mean, he just hammers it out, right? I do the same thing. And what I find is that many learners, even after learning a language for 6 months, for a year, they're still speaking in a rather staccato manner. They never make the leap to actually speaking more fluently. And so what shadowing can do is it can force you. Now you can start shadowing, and I recommend, especially if you're a beginner, start by reducing the speed to maybe 60%, 70%, and get to the point where you can speak along with the speaker, and then gradually increase. Don't stop at 100%. Keep going. Okay. Now this is something that at the beginning you're not necessarily going to do. Keep going past 100%, but it's a great exercise once you get to be at a more advanced level, because it will really help you to speak more fluently. Now, as far as the anecdote is concerned, very quickly. So I lived in Germany initially from 2005 to 2007, and I would say I reached a solid C1 level after my first day in Germany. I spoke very, very well. Like I said, a lot of the times people thought I was native, not necessarily all the time, but I spoke the language really quite well. Then I moved to Spain for 2 years and learned Spanish. And while I was in Spain, I did teach German. I met some Germans. I actually had a German roommate, but we didn't necessarily see each other all the time. I spoke far more Spanish than German, and my German definitely got rusty, right? Not to the point where I couldn't speak it anymore, but definitely rustier than it had been. Well, I moved back to the States after living for 2 years in Spain, and I applied for a job at Sony Online Entertainment as a German translator, which I actually ended up getting. But I had 2 weeks to prepare for the interview, and I knew that the interview would be entirely German with 2 already existing translators on staff, and I wanted to make a good impression. So obviously it wasn't just testing my language level, but it was also about video games. So what I did was I found a podcast where it was 3 German guys, and they were just talking about, they were just nerding out on video games for hours at a time. And so I would listen to this, and they were obviously using a lot of jargon, speaking super fast, right? And referencing a lot of the games that I knew that I was, going to be expected to actually be able, be aware of, let's just put it that way. And I would actually, at the beginning, it was difficult because I just wasn't used to speaking German anymore. And at, the first day, maybe I shadowed for 20 minutes. And every day I tried to shadow a little bit more. And by the end of those 2 weeks, after having shadowed for every single day, I felt like I had been in country for 2 weeks. I kid you not. So it can be a very, very powerful method, but only if you like it. And only if you, as I said, start slow and gradually increase. If you go full bore at the beginning, you're going to get frustrated. And you're going to think, this isn't for me. Not necessarily the case.
Wonderful. I have nothing else to add. That was a wonderful anecdote. Xauka, he says, thank you for the response in your work. I've been doing that for French, AI, trying to tackle the DOLF C1 next June. Good luck with that. I'm pretty sure you're going to do fine. XAU is gold, CAD, Canadian dollar. Wonderful. Thank you for the explanation. I was reading a book about Canada today. It's called Fire, something about fires. Very interesting. Never been to Canada before? Have you been to Canada before?
I have, yeah. Beautiful country.
Yeah, I'd like to visit. Let me see. This is an interesting question. I'll let you answer that. David, is the jump from C1 to C2 way bigger than the B2 to C1? And I guess C2 to native versus native is a situation where accuracy and vocab usage and way bigger vocab.
Do I have to do it on takes and anything?
If you want, you can answer like that. I don't know if people are going to like it.
Probably not. Is
we
the
do
jump
this all day, by the way.
to C2 way bigger than from B2 to C1? I would, even though you have to learn an incredible amount of vocab, and you become more and more, you have to become even more and more of a stickler for detail as you move from C1 to C2. I mean, we're talking about infinitesimal details between synonyms, right? Where they're essentially synonymous, but you need to know that this one has this connotation and this one has this connotation. Regardless, I would still say that even though it might lexically, it might not be as large of a jump, but in terms of skills, I would say that B2 to C1, and I'm interested to hear your views on this, that B2 to C1 is a larger jump because it is not easy to jump from, because B2 is everyday fluency, for what I like to call functional fluency. I think you'd say something similar. And C1 is academic, educated fluency. This is a common misunderstanding. People think C2 is the same as native speaker. That's not the case, because your average native speaker of every language speaks at a B2 level in their everyday life. C1 is already academic, it's already educated language, and C2 is absurd. It's basically just, okay, you have absolutely mastered this language, right? Yeah.
I agree. B1 to B2 to C1 is I think the biggest gap, because once you get into C1 and keep reading, then you don't even think about it anymore. Just in order to reach C2, I think you have to read a lot, and you have to find yourself in certain circumstances that allow it's special reading, but not only. Yeah. You have to really delve into the language in all the possible situations. It's not just about reading documentaries, maybe even attending lectures at university, or like whether online or not. You have to live the language.
Yes.
You really have to understand the nuts and bolts at a very deep level. It takes a long time. It's just years, decades.
It does. Yeah, it takes a very long time. However, at the same time, if you already have a C1 level, you can effectively consume any kind of material. So it's really just about turning up the volume in terms of increasing the amount of input.
Exactly.
There are obviously additional exercises you need to do if you want to speak at a C2 level as well, but it's mostly just getting more of what you're already getting, whereas going from B2 to C1 is still a significant leap in terms of, like I said, lexical, so vocabulary as well as skills.
Fully agreed.
Yeah.
Fully agreed. Julia, again, thank you again for the second contribution. Qual é a opinião? Once again, I'm going to read it in Portuguese, and then we're going to translate it, and we're going to get to that question. Qual é a opinião de vocês sobre tantas pessoas falando com um idioma mais ou menos útil que o outro? Vocês têm alguma razão para aprender idiomas ou simplesmente porque vocês gostam? So she basically asked, What is your opinion about a lot of people saying that a language is more or less useful than another one? And do you have any specific reason to learn languages, or is it just because you like them? Julia, I'll get back to you. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. I would say that the concept of a language being more or less useful really depends on the person. Objectively, there are languages that are more widespread, say like English, Mandarin, and Spanish come to, if you think about languages, there might be useful in general for a number of reasons. But then you also have to consider, let's suppose, Julia, that you want to learn Italian for you, and you're going to move to Italy because you're going to, I don't know, go back to your family and join your family living there. What is going to be more useful, Italian or English? So English, of course, is useful in general, but Italian is going to be particularly useful for you because of your life circumstances. So useful is something that, yeah, you can see it from an objective standpoint, but you can also see it from a subjective standpoint. It really, a personal standpoint. It depends also on your life circumstances. In my case, we're not going to go through all the languages, but I like thinking the languages are like girls that choose you. You think you choose them, but they chose you. So they choose you. I know this is cracking. So just to give an example, a lot of languages that I've learned is not because I just sit down on a table and say I'm going to learn. Although I fantasize about doing that when I was like 12, I was writing like long lists of languages that I wanted to learn, but I didn't really have a motive, like a specific reason. Then life happened. And just to give an example, I wanted to learn specific languages because certain things happen in my life, right? For example, for German, I happened to watch an ad on TV. My father and a friend of my father, they talked about Germany. They lived in Germany. They went there on vacation. I was really, when I was a little child, was fascinated by Germany. And so it happened that at the ripe age of 15, I decided, oh, there's an ad on television. My father talks about Germany all the time with his friend. Oh, okay, let's start German. And then Spanish, because I learned German with the famous D'Agostini course. And I saw another ad with the same course. Oh, this works. Let me give it a try. And then I learned Spanish. Then I met, I know it's going to put a smile on his face. I met a Dutch girl on a summer camp, and I decided to learn Dutch. I had never even considered, oh, the Netherlands, what is that? But then, because of that specific life circumstance, I started learning Dutch. And every language has its own story. Yeah. So useful or not, yes, English is important, of course. Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, these three, I think, are going to be very useful for a number of things. But think about what you want to do in life. For me, it's a mix of pleasure, but also life circumstances. Language learning is a pleasure in and of itself. So it's a mix. Sometimes I do it. There's always a specific reason due to the fact that the language siren is calling me in different ways. And then I just, take the call and say, yes, and then I embark upon the quest. It's a very pleasurable quest because is there anything more fun than learning?
I wouldn't say so. And children don't even differentiate between fun and learning. It's all the same thing.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's traditional schooling that gets you to start this differentiating between the two, unfortunately. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Ricardo says, herzliche Grüße aus Porto, Portugal, David and Luca. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Anyway, thank you for the wonderful questions, for the enthusiasm. It's always very nice. And once again, we can talk about language learning for hours.
Yeah.
We already passed the first hour, so we're going to speak a little bit, answer some of the, let's take a few other questions, and then we're going to share something cool, and then we're going to call it quits. I hope you guys are enjoying this chat, and please leave in the comments if this is of any interest. If this is interesting, we'll do this again more and more. There's more to share. We can also do things that are more specific. I think you've seen David before. We've done another, I think it's 2 lives.
We did a live and we also did a video.
We did a panel. We did a live. You made a video. I think there's 4 things we've done. Anyway, if I don't know if you've checked the other things we've done. We had a nice presentation. When did we do that? That was like a few months ago, right? A lot of people liked it.
Yeah, that was the live when we were talking about B2 to C1.
Yeah, I'm just gonna find that for you guys, and if you, I think that is one of the videos, the most popular videos on the channel.
Yeah.
No, I can't find
it. While you're looking for that, I'll field another question here. Actually, a question that just came up from Ange. Why some days I feel more fluent than others? How to become consistent? Yeah, we love this. We love this question. So this is something that Luca and I talked about actually recently, and I like to think about level as, when you think of a level, you think of this straight line, right? But in actuality, a level is not a straight line. It's actually, you can think about it like a wave. So your level is actually the average of that wave. So if you want to increase your level, what that means, if your level has actually increased, if it's gone up, it means that your worst day is better than your best day at a lower level. Yeah. Right. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to have oscillation. You're not going to have variation of that wave. So you're going to have bad days and you're going to have better days. Right. As I said, Germans invariably think I'm German when I meet them, even when I speak to them for hours at a time. But sometimes I do have a bad day where I'm sick and I'm really tired or whatever. And then I'll say something and it'll be absurd and it'll just be wrong. But native speakers also make mistakes all the time. And I'm always paying attention. And I've heard native speakers of every single language make mistakes that they would otherwise not make because they were tired. So the question is, what standard are you holding yourself to? So don't worry about it. It's a perfectly normal thing because your brain is something organic, right? We're not computers. So you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. But as long as at some point you get to the point where, like I said, even your worst day is better than your best day 6 months ago or a year ago, you're making progress. You're doing just fine.
I got nothing to add.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to wonderful answer, by the way. Antonio Guignon Bibo, what are your main sources when you reach a B1 to B2 level? Any specific content? I can answer that. You can answer that yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's mainly podcasts and videos. Because podcasts and videos are like, you have conversations basically. It depends on the video as well. You can have monologues. On YouTube, you can find all sorts of things. But podcasts, especially when you have a conversation between two people, it's really good because you can see how people use the language to get, to have a dialogue. From the dawn of time, humanity has been learning languages through dialogues and stories, right? So dialogues and stories are the best ways to start, I think, to start with as a beginner. Of course, the level of the language might be a little bit simplified with respect to a normal podcast between two people, but podcasts and videos, either for specific for language learners or even for native speakers, they can be very useful at a B1, B2 level. So this is what I've been using, podcasts with transcripts. I use the Smart Learning with Podcasts. This is a technique where you go through the podcast systematically, step by step, and Smart Learning with videos. That's the same thing. You can find it in the Overcoming the Intermediate Plateau, which now is Beyond the Plateau. It's a new name of the course, and among other things. But it's not only the content, podcasts and videos, it's how you use it. Because once again, there's a huge difference between watching a video, just watching a video like in front of the computer, listening to a video in the background and sitting down and breaking it down with subtitles, downloading the subtitles, highlighting things. It's a different level of engagement, of focus, and you learn much more when you're focused. Unfortunately, because people will like you, hey, I'm just going to listen to the language and magically you're going to learn it. Yes, but once again, the bottom line, the simple rule of thumb for language acquisition is really simple. You have to consume content that is interesting for you, that is comprehensible. In order for it to be comprehensible, you have to find ways to be able to also see the transcript, because you also want it to be rich. Rich means it has to be outside of your comfort zone a little bit. If you listen to something that you perfectly understand, it's not gonna make a dent. It's still exposure to content, but you want to stretch your boundaries all the time. It's like going to the gym, 4 kilos, 5, 6, just continually pushing in order to build muscle.
Exactly. And 4, 5, 6, exactly. So, trying to make incremental gains is a lot easier than trying to make massive leaps. It is possible to do that, but you do run the risk of burning out if you overdo it. Yeah. Otherwise, I don't have anything to add to that. Absolutely.
We're going to take 3 more questions before we delve into Linguathor. Gianfranco Rapolla, he's Italian like me. Hi, Luca. I wish I could speak English the way you do. You're extraordinary. Thank you very much. Indeed, you're extraordinary indeed. And I just want to ask you how I can get to a C1 English level, considering that I have a B1 level, I hope you answer. I'm answering, Gianfranco. The answer is, you know, in what we've been talking about. And you have to make sure that you consume content that is interesting and you stretch your boundaries all the time. If you have a B1 level and you continue listening to podcasts at that level, you will not improve. Rather, I think that what you should do is consume content that, once again, stretches your boundaries. So should you watch a movie? That might be a little bit too difficult. So go back and listen to a lot of YouTube content, short videos, and then by consuming those, you will realize that your brain understands better and better. How do you improve your speaking skills? Well, you have to speak. You have to speak with a tutor. You can speak with AI. Again, stretching your boundaries. If you keep talking like, hey, how's it going? You keep going through the motions and through the same conversations, you're not going to improve. It's always about stretching your boundaries. Once again, if this is of any interest, listen to this again. And most of all, listen to the webinar that I've just shared it before in the chat. So there's the paying option, which is the course, but you don't need to get a course. You can just watch the webinar that we were talking about, how to move from B2 to C1.
Yeah.
The stuff we talk about is valuable also if you have a B1 level. So go through that. And you're going to see the magic happen, so to speak. One last thing about F. How is your Turkish going? It's going great. We're going to show you now just how I'm using his wonderful tool. Someone said Tony Hernandez. Tony is another student of the Academy. Actually, he's a student of mine, private student of mine. We met in Paris, and I have a video with him, a wonderful video of that. If you it's one of the first videos in 2013. Teresa asks, last question. Let's go through one last question. David, would you please consider increasing the number of words that people can upload on Linguathor? Okay, so let's talk about that, right?
Yes, absolutely, sure. I will speak to my brothers who are the amazing programmers who actually created Linguathor. But while Linguathor T3 rather, but while we're talking about it, we may as well show everyone else who doesn't know what T3 is exactly what it is that we mean.
Show not tell. So
T3
let's
show
share
not
the
tell.
screen. Let's share our screen and let's see. I'm gonna share my entire screen or just a part. Let's see.
I would maybe go here to.
Okay, well, this is the.
Well, that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah.
And then let's see here. Look, you should be able to see the screen right now.
Okay, we'll be able to see it over here if it's working.
Yeah. So let's see. Let's say that you are learning German, right? So you find yourself in Learn German. This is Deutsche Welle, it's the website. And in particular, you go to Deutsche Welle Learning German, and you go to Top Thema mit Vokabeln. This is what one of the sources that I really like when it comes to learning German.
Yeah, for my students anyway.
it's free, of course.
Yeah.
This is, for example, let's say you have a B1 level, Niveaustufe B1. Medien, you have audio, you have the text you can download, you have interaktive Übungen, so exercises, interactive exercises. Sprache natürlich Deutsch, so it's German. So let's say, for example, that you're interested in science. Warum Plutonium so gefährlich ist. This is one of my favorite
One of your favorite topics, yeah.
So
why plutonium is so dangerous.
It's a little bit morbid, but warum Plutonium so gefährlich ist means, as he said, why plutonium is so dangerous. You click on that, and you can see here, for example, you have the audio that you can play, and you have the text. Now you can see, just click on start, and you will have, you can get the text. Now let's move on to the next one. You can see here the manuscript. You should be able to see that.
Yeah.
Let me see if I.
I think you have to say condividi.
Yeah. So you should be able to see that. We have the manuscript here. Let's see if it shows. There's a little bit.
Yeah, there's a little bit of delay, so it should show.
So you can take the manuscript. You can also download it as a PDF. But what you can simply do is you can copy this text. So as you can see here, I just copy it, and then I'm just going to move on to the next one here. I'm going to use Linguathor T3. You can see here T3 Linguathor. And what you do is you basically upload the text. Okay. So you should be able to see that, right?
Yeah,
so
there's just a slight delay, but otherwise.
Is that correct? Yes.
Now you need to just sign in.
I think I'm signed in already. No, I was not signed in.
Yeah.
So let's see. So here we have.
Now, what you'll notice on the landing page is it actually shows. It's showing the landing page in the language that you're learning. That's by design. So you can scroll over anything. You can scroll over anything in the app. Notice that the app is actually in German. That's by design. So even though Luca is learning German, we have programmed it so that everything's in German, but you can scroll over anything and see a translation into your native language, right?
Yeah, so you have it here.
Exactly.
Now you want to copy the text, right?
Yeah.
So you have here the fine thing. So here.
Yeah, go to My Content, exactly.
So you go to My Content, and then you go and click here. So import text. Sounds German, import text, and then you can write over here, warum Plutonium so gefährlich ist. I can copy this here, Überschrift, so you have the title, and then boom, you have importieren. So this is you can also design whether this is in English or in German directly. It takes a minute or two because it's just going to take.
It's translating. Yes, using AI to translate.
A lot of stuff, as you can see.
Exactly, and it's also generating audio. So that's the amazing thing about T3. The way we designed it is you get translations of everything, every sentence, every single word, and you also get high quality audio.
Exactly. So now you can see here. Now they have designed. You and your brothers have designed this great tool. You can see here L1. So you have steps. Here you go through various steps. You can, for example, just lesen, which means to read. You have also the translation here. You can listen in L2. So L2 is German. You can dual lesen means you can dual read, and you will show you in a second. Then you can just read in L2 in German. And then you have ART.
No, active reverse translation.
Active reverse translation. We're not going to delve into this now.
Yeah.
But we're going to show you here. Let's click on Dual Lesen. Now, here's the cool thing about this. Look at this. So you can see not only the translation. Let's take this. Das radioaktive Plutonium ist einer der gefährlichsten Stoffe, die es gibt. Okay? So let's suppose that you're learning German. You see this sentence. And you have directly the translation of the meaning of the sentence in your native language. Let's suppose that English is your native language. So immediately here, you have the sentence by sentence, you have an understanding at a sentence level and a meaning level, right? But here's the thing. For German, for French, for Spanish, Italian, there's almost a word by word, not all the time, of course, equivalence in the terms of how we convey things, even if this is not even true. It depends on
many times the order of words is effectively the same in Romance languages and English.
Yes, but even then, the main problem is that the way languages convey meaning sometimes, especially in certain expressions, is different. Like, for example, in German, you have Ich verstehe nur Bahnhof, which is a very funny expression. Which means, in English, that would be, it's Greek to me, right?
Yeah.
So they express the same idea in two completely different ways. So what's the trick here? The trick here is that you can also see up here the meaning of the single words. This is really important because when you understand a sentence, the meaning of the sentence is one thing, but here you can actually infer grammar patterns just by looking at how the single components work and function within the same sentence, right?
Exactly. So notice in English it says radioactive plutonium is one of the most dangerous substances there are. And in English we use the expression there is, there are, right? To talk about the existence of something. But in German it says einer der gefährlichsten Stoffe, die es gibt, which literally means one of the most dangerous substances which it gives, right? And notice that for some words there are multiple translations, and that's because these words have different meanings, right? But the fact that you can see all of those meanings at once makes it so that you can then choose the one that makes the most sense within a specific context. So literally we're saying that, or rather which it gives, right? Es gibt, just like in French you have the expression il y a, which doesn't change, right? Whether it's singular or plural, it stays the same.
Exactly.
Same thing in German, right? In English, we say there is, there are. In Dutch, you say er is, er zijn, right? So it changes. In German, it doesn't change, right? So, and I realized that without needing grammar right away is what Luke was saying.
Exactly. You can even hide the text if you want the text in English. You can do a lot of things. You can download. This is what I normally do. I download the entire PDF and I put it on my phone. and they use it. Basically, here you can. I think I don't know if they can see actually this one. Yeah. I'm not sure because it changed. I have to go back into.
You'd have to share full screen.
Yeah, I think I have to share full screen. So let me share that. Let's go back. Technical details, guys. That happened. So let me see here. Condividi schermo. Wait, am I doing that correctly? Yep. So I think I'm doing that correctly. Condividi l'intero schermo.
Intero. You won't be able to do the audio, but that's okay. Yeah, so now you have to tap here and then condividi.
Yeah, so you should be able to see all this stuff. Let's see if this works. And you should be able to see now this PDF, this beautiful PDF. Let's check. And you see the entire thing. Here you also have a
QR code. QR code, which will, if you're signed in, it'll take you right back to the lesson inside of your library.
Amazeballs.
Which is awesome.
So you can see here it's broken. I really like this because I put it on my phone. I just put my iPhone next to the piece of paper because I download and print everything. Ça va sans dire, as they say. And then this allows me to very fast to understand everything that I need to understand. Now let me show you. Here, okay, let me stop sharing the screen here. And I want to, am I not sharing the screen? Yes. I wanted to show what I do with Turkish. So let's take this and let's see. So now what I have to do is I have to share my screen, right?
I think you need to stop sharing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now re-add. Yeah.
Condividi schermo again.
all the technical details here.
This is there's a lot of things happening here.
Yeah.
So you should be able to see that filing out into this. So basically, as you can see here, the text in Turkish is even more complex because Turkish has an SOV structure. So German has already a different syntactical structure, but Turkish is another thing. With Linguathor, the really interesting, the part that is so interesting is that, yes, I can use, for example, DeepL. Yes, I can use Google Translate, but you will see the translation at the sentence level, here at the word level, at a lexical level, as they call it, it really allows you to memorize words better because you see not only the word as it is, not only the meaning, but also the function and the form of the word within a given context.
Yeah, so this gigantic sentence is a spectacular example. So
this is a YouTube video prepared for those who set such an ambitious goal by the end of the year. That is for those who are planning to lose about 15 kilos. And by the way, this is a video that this is a podcast that I created by using Notebook LM. And as you can see here, this is a YouTube video prepared for those who set such an ambitious goal. I'll say this one more time, by the end of the year, that is for those who are planning to lose about 15 kilos. Now, the problem is if you read the sentence in Turkish, you will realize that there is no one-on-one correspondence here. You will see here that you start with year and until such ambitious a goal, those who are for means approximately 15 kilograms to lose, those thinking for prepared a YouTube video this.
A YouTube video this.
So literally, if you see here, this is a YouTube video prepared for those thinking to lose.
It's actually in the opposite order.
15 kilograms, approximately 15 kilograms, blah, blah, blah. So this is exactly, it's the opposite syntactical order, and you get an idea of where we're going here. Going back to what I was saying before, Amazeballs.
So did she get that from you?
Well, she got that from me because when she came here visiting, we were counting the amount of time
that you said that. Yeah, you say it a lot.
Yeah,
that's your favorite word.
It's my favorite word. So
the whole idea behind
Teresa goes like the word for word translations are priceless. Yes, especially because Teresa is going through Russian, and that is really important. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the whole idea behind T3 is that I designed the method around the time that I was learning Chinese, and before that I had learned German, I had learned Spanish, and of course those are foreign languages, but they're close enough to English that you can actually get at least a sense of what a sentence means a lot of the time, right? We just saw that German is, far more different than Spanish, especially when you get subordinate clauses, right? Then the word order change arounds, there are changes around, there are certain words that cause that to happen, et cetera, et cetera. But it's nothing like a language as foreign as Chinese or Turkish or Hungarian. And so what I found was that I was wasting, if you will, a lot of time doing what I like to call dictionary work or digital dictionary work. It doesn't really make a difference. If I'm having to spend lots of time looking up the meanings of words, then I have less time that I can spend actually just enjoying the language, right? And so I designed T3 so that I could immediately jump into any material at any level, even as a complete beginner. And this is how I learn now. So if I were to start learning, for example, Icelandic, then I would jump straight in. Now, granted, I speak German. I have a reasonable level in Dutch and Swedish, so Icelandic is easier. But let's just say something like, I don't know, Vietnamese or whatever, or Korean. You can also use T3 with Korean. Then I can jump straight in and I can understand every single sentence and every single word. And it makes it so much more enjoyable to actually consume, right?
Yes, but I would like to add that this is
Please
just
do.
one of the features. Today we've showed you just what makes the it's fun. It becomes extremely comprehensible. Again, not just at a sentence level, but at a lexical level. But you can also do translation work. You can do reverse translation. You have a chat bot. There's so much behind the scenes that we haven't even showed because we want to keep it concise. But just that one feature makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I wanted to show you.
The chat bot is in the works, by the way.
It's in the works. Yeah, it's still not there, but it's going to be a comprehensive tool that you can use not only to understand, listen, read, but also speak, and so you can bridge, this input and output.
Yeah.
One more ad, if you allow us. I have just it's just on screen here. If you want to try Linguathor, you can see it on screen. You can use a coupon 20% off by using the Luca 20, and you should give it a try because really. When I work with people like David, or I start using tools like the one that David and his brothers created, like Linguathor T3, I love. These are amazing tools that I want to show. Like I'm using this. I'm using it for Turkish. Someone asked me, "How is my Turkish going?" It's going great because I'm having a lot of fun. I sit down, I have fun. I use Linguathor T3. I use other tools. I like the language, and I find the experience rewarding because every time I sit down, I just have fun.
Yeah.
Right. That's the most important thing. I just wanted to stress one more time that a lot of learners have some sort of learning anxiety. When am I going to get there? Like. In Shrek 2, Donkey says, "Am I gonna get there? When are we gonna get there? Far, far away, right? They're going there." And the question is, I think you should focus on, rather than the goal is like process. If you enjoy the process, you win every day. If you focus on the goal that is still months away, then you're gonna lose in a way, or you're gonna have this perception of I'm not there yet. So the bottom line, the message is, we love languages. We love talking about language learning. We like talking about language acquisition, how the brain learns. We can talk about this forever. But the bottom line is, if you start enjoying language, then you will learn a language. You're going to sit down, you're going to do it, you're going to experiment. And with the amazing tools we have nowadays, and Linguathor is an example of that, you can accomplish anything if you want to.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And very importantly, you need to sign in. So you can sign up to T3 for free and start using it. If you'd like to upgrade and get access to all the premium stuff, you can use Luca's code. You just need to do that by clicking on the upgrade button once you've signed in inside of the app. Okay. In addition to that, I mean, the coolest thing about T3, and like I said, I designed it for myself, and then I decided to turn it into an app. And then at some point, I showed it to some people, and like, oh my God, this is so cool! I wish I had access to this. And that's why we turned it into an application that people can actually use. But it's amazing when you combine the bilingual text with the audio. That's why we added high quality audio. I also recommend combining it with the actual original audio. So we just showed you guys the Deutsche Welle text that also has audio. So you listen to that audio while reading along, first in your native language and then in both languages simultaneously with the translations of the sentences and the words. And what's amazing is that if you just do this a few times, and then just do away with the text, just listen to the audio, you'll find that you have reached a listening comprehension level that would have taken you hours before, but it just happened automatically because you were getting the bilingual inputs and you were getting the auditory input at the same time, right? And there's a reason why we put the translations on top of each other and not next to each other, because it prevents saccades, right? We were just talking about this the other day.
Beautiful saccade,
so
beautiful word.
It's a beautiful word. So the problem with a traditional bilingual text, if you can even find them, actually they're very popular in Poland, is that you have one language on one side and the other language on the other. But not only do you not have translations of the individual words, but you have to do this the whole time, right? You're playing tennis with your head. And it's very tiring for your neck. It's very tiring for your eyes. It's very tiring for your brain. So everything about the way that we design T3 is made to make your life easier. That's the whole idea behind the app.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderfully said. Thank you very much, guys. It's been amazing. I hope you enjoyed this. Let us know in the comments if you wanna see more. There's more coming this week. Stay tuned for Thursday. There's a YouTube video, very interesting YouTube video coming out, and you will see what this is all about. And there's also a very special event, that is happening this Sunday. If you like this, you're going to like that much more, because we're going to, we're going to show you in practice what we do.
That's my mother.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom.
Rhonda McDonald loved this very enjoyable live feed. Hugs to you both. Guess who?
Guess who?
Who says hi. Someone is coming right now. Someone says bye. Thank you, guys. Thank you. It's always nice. All the questions, all the enthusiasm. You're going to hear from us again very soon. Actually, Thursday, and especially stay tuned for Sunday. There's going to be a very special event. Thank you, and we will hugs from
exactly, hugs from Poland, hugs from Krakow. Yeah.
Ciao, ciao.
Take care, everybody. Ciao, Krakow.
Ciao, ciao.